Hi all, sorry about the technical difficulties there. Hope you guys can hear me now. If you can thumbs up, let me know. But welcome to the Strickland Rundown. I was talking earlier before. I think that before this game, I was reflecting. I was like, when is the last time the Knicks have come in as kind of the favorite at home against LeBron James? You know, the self-proclaimed king of New York and all that. I mean, he couldn't beat Mario Hezonja. Let me repeat that. Mario Hezonja tossed his shit and fucking embarrassed him at Madison Square Garden. And that is something that should be in every LeBron history for it should be on his epitaph, actually, whenever that happens, God forbid. I hope that his epitaph has a picture of Mario Hezonja blocking the shit out of him and pointing and laughing at him. But today seemed like, of all of the milestones the Knicks have reached, making LeBron look like the underdog. They've done that to Steph. They've done that to a lot of their past tormentors. Tonight, it just didn't happen. There's a lot of reasons for that, which we'll get into. And I think the bottom line is the Knicks didn't play their best game, and the Lakers played very well. If you want to reduce it to one thing, Jalen Brunson had one of his worst games this season. Karl Towns had one of his worst games this season. And LeBron put on, a vintage LeBron performance, enabled, of course, by OG Anunoby also only playing 16 minutes due to injury. I thought that, in general, the Knicks didn't have a great plan on either end. The Lakers were switching a lot of things. The paint was packed, and they got Brunson to take a lot of shots that, a lot of these tough contested middies, which we know he's capable of hitting. He hasn't hit those, I think, as much at a high rate as he usually does. That's kind of what you want, though, right? You want him taking tough contested middies against wings. If he beats you like that, he beats you, and he's capable of it. On average, you're going to, you're going to win that bet if you're a good enough team to win elsewhere against the Knicks. And so, I think that it was a game where, they got exposed in some ways where we've seen them get exposed. The Lakers have not just LeBron, but Rui Hachimura, Max Christie even at this point, he's 6'6", pretty long wingspan. They have these long wings where when the Knicks have lost to games that they shouldn't, and I think this qualifies, it tends to be because they don't have, because the other team has these long wings, these long athletic wings that can switch onto Brunson and enforce one of those mini floaters. And I think that, when these, the thing is, again, Brunson is capable of those, right? But if that's what the Knicks offense becomes, it's a win, especially this year with so many weapons. And, they won on that end tonight. And on defense, I think that OG going out was kind of the final straw. But to be honest, LeBron was locked in. This is an environment he cares about a lot, and he was going to, and he showed out. And I do think, people don't want to hear about 3-point variance. They only took 36 threes, and they hit 50% of them. And the Knicks shot worse than their season average. They miss a lot of shots they do hit. And that stuff does happen. I know that's not something people like to hear, but that happens. So, to some extent, I'm not panicking over this loss, but I do want to welcome back, for the first time in maybe a year. I don't know the last time we did a pod together, but I want to welcome back the professor, Matt Miranda, from the Strickland, to give his thoughts on what was a little bit of a disappointing Saturday. What's up, Matt?
What's going on, Stacey?
I'm actually
welcome to the Believe Knicks pod. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, sorry. I think you're on the wrong show. Sorry about that.
tougher to believe right now, right? So
Yeah. Like you, I'm not in any way devastated or concerned about this loss. The Lakers strike me even without Anthony Davis. This feels like the kind of team that I expected them to give the Knicks trouble. Not this particular trouble. I did not expect the Laker defense to be as effective as it was. Although I think, Karl Anthony Towns is not Karl Anthony Towns as we know him over the season, and I do think that matters a bit. Like you saw a lot of plays that at other points would be either an issue for the defense or not conceded. There was a play in the second half when Brunson was coming up with the ball, left behind a perfect bounce pass for a trailing Towns, and a month ago he's putting that up and it's a 3, and instead it ended up being he's going into a one-on-one move against Austin Reeves on the perimeter. I think that's a big deal. I think when the player who's been the most transformative impact on your offense, which is the strength of your team, is compromised, and then like you said, I think the last straw. The defense was already struggling tonight, but I thought in the second half they'll make adjustments. They'll just win out somehow. And once OG went down, I don't think the calculus is very difficult in this game. Your best offensive player is compromised. Your best or your most important defensive player in this game, your best defensive player, left with an injury. You're not really deep to begin with. You lost. And like you said, you're playing against a guy who you weren't playing against Joe Schmo coming through New York. You were playing against
or even LeBron on like the 81 other games where he like a 40-year-old, right?
Yeah, no, this was like national game Rondo. Like this is a different cat.
Yeah, I do want to. I think you brought up a lot of good points, which we'll get into all of them. I do want to talk about Cat a little bit. So there's a couple things. One, I think I saw a stat from someone that he's 1 for 18 on his last 18 threes, or he's been shooting poorly since he sprained his thumb.
Yeah,
and it is notable because before that he was guaranteed from. I mean, he was shooting, I think, probably better than he ever had, even in his very illustrious career. So it's not
high. Yep.
He's been mid to upper 40s most of the season. Do you think this is his worst performance? And how much of it do you think, where would you break that down to? Is it things that Tibbs should have adjusted to? Is it just this is a bad matchup for him? I mean, he was getting switched on to LeBron a lot, and like I saw Cranges McBasketball, normally a very diplomatic guy in front of the pod, but he was like, hands down, Cat is on LeBron is our most valuable player. He's like, yeah, but he's got to worry about the drive more, right? I'm curious what you saw from Cat and, how the Knicks might be able to work around that, because they are going to see other teams that will try to attack him on defense. And, not every team has LeBron, but the Celtics have Tatum, the Mavs have Luka, the, SGA is wing size, right? So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the LeBron is basically, though, like, other than Luka, Shea, LeBron might be like the 3 absolute worst matchups in the league for Towns specifically, because of their abilities outside, off the dribble, to get to the line, and just in LeBron's case in particular, like, I don't know how to say this. Towns is on a slightly different wavelength defensively, and there are people who can take advantage of that. And LeBron, Luka, and Shea are 3 guys who can definitely take advantage. I'm very curious to see the next game against Boston, which I hope the Knicks will be healthy for, in particular because I'm very curious to see now that the Knicks will have had November, December, January, like 3.5 months since the first meeting. I'm very curious to see how they defend Tatum, how they defend some of the stuff that I know the Celtics will try to do with KP. And I want to see, like, if LeBron was on like this year's Cavs, I would be very worried for the Knicks, just because he's big enough and strong enough and smart enough that he's a problem. He's a problem for a guy like Towns.
And we don't have Mario Hezonja.
I heard you talking about that.
I wanted to talk about that every time I heard Doris Burke or Richard Jefferson talk tonight. Like, LeBron owns the Knicks. LeBron owns MSG. He couldn't beat Mario Hezonja and Emmanuel Mudiay. Fuck out of here with that shit.
So by that logic, then Giannis Antetokounmpo also owned by Mario Hezonja.
Well, the Knicks actually, I don't think I think the Knicks still got blown out in that
I
Bucks
think
game.
they did. I think they did.
They beat Hezonja made the puck, and then
They did.
I have to. Have you seen this meme on Twitter of I don't know who the golfer is, but this is like heavy set, very outlandishly dressed golfer smoking a cigar on the green, and Tiger Woods across from him, dressed like immaculately like Tiger Woods always is, and it's become a meme for like the person you expect to be there and the person you don't. And that's I always think of Sonia and LeBron because like
Yes.
he just I'm really tired of all that King of New York shit.
Yeah, I was struck. I'm glad you brought that up because this isn't just. I don't think this is just like an age thing, but I remember the last game that Michael Jordan played at Madison Square Garden as a Bull. So when everyone knew like he might be done, nobody knew the Washington shit was going to come. It would seem like this is Michael Jordan's last game in New York, and he put on a show. The Bulls won. He made like these incredible, even by Jordan standards, it was an amazing highlights after highlights, incredible game, and it was really meaningful because you were watching a guy who for almost 15 years had been putting on a show often at the highest of stakes in this building. So whenever they made a big deal about Michael Jordan in Madison Square, like, yeah, it meant something. I have been very struck by the push. I know that like LeBron apparently loves playing in MSG, and that's fine. I believe that, I guess. But like this crush to make he's never played against the Knicks when they've been good, really, other than 1 year with Miami, and now I guess you could say this year. Like that's basically in his whole career the only 2 years that he's been on a team that's been good when the Knicks have been good also. One of those years is when he's now a Laker, so he only plays here once. The year that I think in 2013, I think they only played 3 games, and the Knicks beat them. Like, there's no history of LeBron in New York other than that.
We went the. Are you saying the year where they were the 2 seed?
Yeah,
yeah, they won. The Knicks went 3-1 against Miami. Now, do I think that means they would have beaten Miami in the playoff series? Absolutely not. But that is what most of us hold on to when we think about what if we just played Chris Copeland and if we got the Heat, we would have won, right?
But again, you see, like, there's no history. Like, LeBron probably has as many great games in, Washington as he more. Like he probably has 2 great games everywhere. He probably has 2 50-point games everywhere. I really felt like not for him. I felt like to him this was a special event. This was a big deal to him. Having Bronny play here specifically, I think, was a big deal to him. You can tell because they let Bronny out of his cage to come on a road trip, so you knew it was special. Like, I get all that, but the network trying to act like let's all remember where we were the last time LeBron played. Chill on that shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think they picked the worst combo. It was. I know Doris Burke's a Knicks fan. I know she knows ball really well. But every time LeBron does something, I don't need a breakdown of let's break it down and why the Knicks are ass and LeBron is the greatest thing ever. And of course, Richard Jefferson is going to troll you all day. Breen was a bit of a saving grace. He was actually, I think, kinder to the Knicks than he is on MSG because probably got the sense he needed to be a counterweight. But yeah, and I agree. I mean, LeBron this is the marketing generation, right? I mean, Jordan started that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the most famous brand in basketball is Jordan, and that was partly because of marketing, but it just feels a little manufactured. Yeah. I do want to get to sorry, I don't know if it's Urbo I Malcolm or URBO I Malcolm.
Your
apologize.
boy Malcolm.
Urbo, you're wow. I'm the boomer and you are the millennial, Matt.
Crazy nice.
Well, you're not you're Gen X, right?
I'm Gen X, yes.
Yeah, so I'm Gen X here, and you're the millennial. So your boy Malcolm, my bad. You Tibbs got out coached. I do think there were things that probably you would have wanted to see. I do think I'm still on especially watching the fourth quarter. You have Hart. By the way, I just want to. He deserves his own separate monologue. Josh Hart was fucking awesome tonight. he gets the thing where like he's a great role player. Like tonight, he was just a star. Like he was the best player on the Knicks when Cat and Brunson didn't have it. 26, 12, and 11. But they had him on LeBron down the stretch, and you could see I thought he played valiant defense, if not always as effective as you'd like. But there wasn't like he played LeBron to force him into the fadeaway, and LeBron took one. Next time LeBron spins around, like there's not much at 6'4",
right,
as much of a beast as Josh Hart is that you can do. He moved Cat around. He tried to hide him on guards at times. I thought there was some diversity in how they deployed him. I think just OG is such a linchpin to this defense. And we've seen like when OG hasn't played well, the Knicks defense goes from like passable to dog shit. And Bridges is important too. Don't get me wrong. Hart is important, especially on the glass. But one, I think losing any one of those three guys just because of the lack of depth that we have. Right. Like we saw, like I love Deuce McBride. There are things that I was going nuts when he threw down that dunk last game. Right. He is 6'2", right? There are things he can't do. There's a reason you're still going to close with the starters over him. And I just think losing when everyone's healthy, it's so good. But I think OG is probably of those wings the most irreplaceable, just because he's the only guy on the team that can guard LeBron James. Let's like even try to, right? I respect Bridges. I buy the OG matchup way more. So losing him, I think it really exposed the Knicks to a lot more situations and exacerbated the things that the Lakers were already hitting. I'm curious if you think, if Tibbs could have done anything differently, and what you might have wanted to see, and what you might see next time when he has more game plan prep and with this on tape, right?
I mean, there's so much that's like you have a plan that goes into the game, and then if this guy's hitting the shots, the plan goes this way, and if this guy's not hitting the shots, it goes another way. I was struck watching the game. It felt to me like, particularly that once OG got hurt, like if you ever play chess and you played against someone who's like it's pretty good, like you guys are on a pretty good level competitively together, and then in the game you lose your queen. Like at that point, it doesn't really matter which of you is better competitively. That's such a striking difference in the power imbalance. So like it just changes everything. Maybe Thibodeau got outcoached. I'm not going to pretend that I can tell you that from what I watched. I just know that, like you're saying, there are guys that OG can guard that Bridges cannot. I can't think of really almost anybody that Bridges can guard that OG can't.
I think he'd be better against quick guards. Like I would take better against Maxey.
Better against, but like Bridges can't guard LeBron for 48 minutes. Like he can't do it. OG can do enough good against a quick guard. Like he wouldn't hurt you the same way. Like he's your best defender in this game specifically. He's your most important defender, and I don't know that that's on Tibbs. I don't know about it. And on top of that, again, Towns is not quite Towns, and against a player who specifically this wasn't a game against let me think, like Milwaukee, where like Giannis is a great player, but like LeBron specifically, because so much of his brilliance is IQ based, that to be in a situation against LeBron specifically where, oh my God, you started bleeding somewhere that you weren't expecting to, he's one of the worst people that you can do that against. Like, because now a brain is starting to calculate, we can do this, we can move that around. It's unprecedented. You're playing a guy who for 21 seasons, and he hasn't lost that much physical. Like, most teams have literally never seen what the Knicks saw tonight, which is an all-time great player with as high an IQ as anyone has seen, and a physical. They played Terminator tonight.
But let me throw this back at you, because we've played a player with size, shooting ability, as high IQ player as you've ever seen, and the Knicks have pretty much locked him up twice in a row. And I'm not talking about Cam Thomas. I'm talking about Nikola Jokic. So why did it work? Like I hear you. Like if you have to double against LeBron, you're in trouble. But that's the book on Jokic too.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to look at the Knicks being able to adapt to that matchup and maybe not doing as well this tonight. And obviously LeBron's a more athletic player, even at age 40, and a little more dynamic. But yeah,
I think there's two differences there. One is that I don't think. I still think, even though Jokic, I think is definitely better defensively than what his like stocks would repute him to be, and even though I think LeBron is definitely nowhere near the defender he used to be, I still think in a game where you get like national LeBron game, like a game like this, he was defensively more impactful than Jokic probably was in those games, and also in those games. Towns very specifically in both matchups against Denver this year. Towns, and going back to the last couple of games of the conference finals between the Timberwolves and Mavericks last season, Towns over those 4 games is like pretty much toe-to-toe with Jokic, and the Knicks didn't have that tonight, particularly once OG went down. So like I really think that's just the main difference. I think they had a good gun for this duel, and the gun jammed, and he jammed against the wrong guy.
Yeah, and thankfully it's only a foot sprain, or that is what is the initial.
Hey, it appears Stacy has popped out for the moment. I hope he's going to pop back in soon. But while I wait for that, we have a note here from Chris Bernhard. It'd be nice if Brunson decided to stop trying to force everything and just chilled out. Would be pretty cool, in my opinion. Oh, Stacy is back.
Yeah, I was gonna say before we get to this comment.
Yeah,
just to say, it is reported initially that OG Anunoby has a foot sprain. Hopefully, that's the final diagnosis. But thankfully, it's not something worse. But yeah, I do want to talk about this comment. How much Brunson had a bad game. Let's not sugarcoat it. Switchy teams that force him into a lot of shots are going to be the type of teams that are going to get into the most difficult shots for him. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, how much of it is just him trying to force everything? Should he be passing more? Against these kind of teams with switchable wings, do you think the Knicks need to change their strategy? Excuse me. I'd be curious to your thoughts on that as well.
I thought there were times. I mean, Brunson's uniquely difficult to criticize about his shot diet because his overall effectiveness is more contingent on drawing fouls and making the kinds of 3-point plays that are more common for him than other players. So, like, I want Brunson trying a higher degree of shot more than most people because I know what he can do with it. It did seem in this game to me like he was ending up in a lot of tough situations. I also thought whether it was Achua, this is not a criticism of Hart, but it's just a reality that sometimes when Brunson gets doubled way out far and that pass comes in like right kind of into the center of the paint, it's to Hart or sometimes it's to Achua. There were a couple times in the game just because Hart is 6'4", where like the Lakers can be kind of a big when Hachimura's in there. Like they have size, they kind of have some size and some springiness that most teams don't have. I thought there were times where if a shot goes in or a guy, Achua's got a little better touch on a layup, like Brunson gets an assist, the Knicks are getting points, and like it's not looking quite as rough for him as it ends up looking when he shoots, I think, like 7 for 18 or something. He took tough shots, but like Brunson is easily someone who makes 3 more of those shots, and now he's 10 of 18, and it's a normal Brunson, like, boy, what a great guy kind of game. Like you said, this is going to happen against these kinds of teams. And tonight, just enough people didn't get enough other shots to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still frustrating that Brunson isn't upping his 3-point volume to the level
particularly with Towns down now, that becomes an issue. If Towns isn't really taking them, and Brunson's cutting down on them, and Hearts are all kind of fourth,
not
fifth option thing. Like for a team that relies on, their starters 3-point, production to be a large part of their offense. That's a large part of that offense that is now like not really, clicking. That can be tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in general. Also, teams are packing the paint on Brunson, right?
Yeah.
So they want you to take the pull up because you don't, right? It's not that I think teams don't think he can shoot. I think he can shoot it. The game's right. I mean, there was one game he had 48 against the Cavs 2 years ago. It was with Randall out. I think it was one of the first times. And I'm not saying Randall held Brunson back, but I do think when the Knicks are shorthanded, even this year, right? When Cat is out, when the Knicks are shorthanded, you can see Brunson goes to another gear. He doesn't want to do that if he has another guy. He wants to keep the other guy happy. And I'm not saying I think, but he's like, it's not even about keeping the other guy happy. It's like, if we have more options, we should use Randall. We should use Cat. We should use Mikal Bridges, right? So, but when he doesn't have that option, he goes off, and that includes pull-up threes. I think it's like, and there was this game against Cleveland where, he had 48, and he was just, I haven't seen him as aggressive just pulling up from three. Usually he's like, okay, if you're going to give it to me, it's almost like LeBron, right? Where it's like, he's doing it because the other team is so worried about the drive. It does feel to me like that is really like when that turns into a foul call or a drive for layup, that's fine. When that turns into going into the paint against a big wing, and then you're like, there was one time he ISO'd Austin Reeves, and I think they had it. Credit JJ Redick or whoever, they had a good game plan for Brunson, where even Austin Reeves was positioned well enough where it forced Brunson to throw an errant pass, even though he got to a spot in the post, because Reeves knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to go back for the fadeaway, and he wouldn't let him have it. So I think those things is really what I want to see from Brunson. To your point, the 3-point difference matters, and that segues me to kind of another point. So there's been a lot of discussion. The Knicks have, been burned from three a lot. The percentages have been high. And I think there's been a lot of debate. And I get into this debate sometimes with a lot of people too. The Lakers, before garbage time at least, the Lakers were 17 for 36 from three. 36 is not a ton of threes.
Right.
Near 50% or whatever, it's probably like 47% is a very high number to shoot. So, the kind of standard, and Tibbs has said this recently, right? The way you defend threes is by not letting them get up. Once they get up, there's a randomness there, right? 3-point percentage is usually tough to control. But the Knicks didn't, I think 36 is below the average number of threes. The Knicks took fewer and they shot poorly. But I'm curious, on when you look at the defense, how much of it do you think is just sometimes teams get hot? And sometimes do you think that, well, teams just get hotter against the Knicks because the Knicks are a poor 3-point defense?
I think the Lakers are. I can't give you a statistical reason for this, but the Lakers, there's a few teams in the West like this. They're so streaky. There's like a real chaos element to them. And to me, in a game like this, like, I think basketball is inherently very it's very chaos theory. It's very like, if they don't make those 2 threes in a row in the second quarter, it really would have maybe changed this whole sequence. So I think the Lakers were hot. I think they got good looks. I mean, they weren't hitting all crazy threes, particularly in the first half, but I think it was a kind of deal that they made shots, they got rolling. Everyone was making shots. I thought Hachimura was big for them early. And that always happens even against bad teams. If you let a bad team get a rhythm early, like, it can be a long night. And the Lakers are not a bad team. The Lakers are a top 5 team, I believe, in the West now. I didn't think it was something structural. I really just thought, like, they made some, and once they get going, they get going.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, like, how much, you've heard this argument, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like,
outside of
three-point variance, three-point variance, and if a team gets hot in a game, but sometimes, I think there's people who believe that, even if you only give up 23s, if they're all open, that's bad defense.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you fall in that argument in general, even beyond tonight?
I think that it's one of the questions about Thibodeau that I do wonder about the most. Like, I really like Thibodeau, and I really feel like it's hard to discuss him. There's so much, like emotion and controversy and caricature around Thibodeau that sometimes it's difficult even to start to talk about him before it's like politics, like just it becomes fights. Like I wanted to make a point tonight about something with OG in the minutes. Just it's maybe tangential, but like I know once you start to talk about it, like you've picked a side and now you're getting certain. So like I think that applies to some things with Thibodeau and with the 3-point variance. I don't know. Maybe you know the numbers better than I do. I don't get the sense that like Thibodeau has changed too much in terms of he doesn't want teams scoring in the paint. Like he really doesn't. He doesn't want them getting in the paint. Like he really, really doesn't want doing that. When they lose, particularly a game like tonight, there is a constant Thibodeau anxiety that I have that he's not flexible enough, and that one of the ways it's going to manifest is this: that like he can't adjust to the reality that like the 3-pointer is just different now. Like maybe you still want to cut out a lot of twos, but maybe you need to modify and recognize that like there are now certain threes that are just fundamentally more important to deny than to, and that maybe he's not capable of that. That's very easy to say after a loss like this, but also after 4 or 5 wins in a row, like I'm not thinking that at all. So I'd be curious asking you, like over the course of the whole season, maybe over the course of the last couple of seasons, have you perceived anything that you would identify as a shift in any way away from that we got to protect the paint dogma? And if you have not seen a shift, or do you find that concerning?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. One, I do believe if you limit 3-point attempts, I do think that's going to show up in 3-point accuracy too. Because if teams are shooting well, they might as well shoot more threes, right? So I do stand on that side on 3-point variance. In terms of shifts, the guy will not play Cat and Jericho Sims together. He is willing. He wants to run. He has mostly run with Cat at the 5. Tonight we saw some Cat precious minutes that maybe we didn't want, but I think he's adapted to a roster that mostly has Karl-Anthony Towns at the 5. In terms of the overhelping and all of that, I do think that's a little bit on that. To your point, yeah, I don't think he's adapted as much. But again, on attempt rate, on the number of threes they give up, it's not as high, right? So whether he's adapted or not, I still think on aggregate that style is effective. I think he's more hamstrung by the fact that his 2 best offensive players who have to play 40 minutes a night are, at best subpar defenders, right? And one of them is a center, so that matters the most. I think that he's been in terms of adjustments. I think he's been more willing to switch. I still think he plays Cat too much in drop, but I've also seen him play more aggressively with Cat. I think this is the Lakers didn't come into this game as a great shooting team. And maybe that's something Tibbs should have adapted to when it was clear that they were going to have a good night. But I have seen him be willing to be flexible with Cat and drop. And again, I'll keep pointing to those attempts. I don't know. I'll look it up right now. But in terms of 3-point attempt rate defense, I don't think they're that high. Like, yeah, well, do you know who gives up the most 3-pointers in the league as a frequency basis?
Is it Chicago?
Nope. So as a percentage of total shots, who gives up the most 3-pointers in the league?
Is it a bad team or a good team?
It's a good team.
Good team that gives up a lot of threes. Well, is it Boston?
Nope.
Who gives up threes?
They stole a team.
The Thunder?
Yeah, they give up 45% 3-point attempt rate.
Wow.
And the Knicks actually give up, as a percentage of total attempts, only 41%, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, eighth fewest in the league, right? So they don't give up a lot of threes.
Yeah.
But if you look at the actual percentage, they give up the highest percentage made. They give up 37. So teams are making 37.7% of their threes. Not by coincidence, probably. Oklahoma City's at 32.5. So which is what makes this an interesting debate, I think, because a lot of analytics folks will say teams regress to the mean. So if you just do a good job of limiting those attempts, you're giving up probably fewer high quality attempts. Maybe the Knicks defy that. Maybe the Thunder defy that. I tend to feel like on average that's going to go down, but tonight the Lakers are not a great shooting team, right? So that is one where I lean towards. I can't blame Tibbs too much on that.
Do you think Tibbs not playing Sims with Towns in any way foreshadows that he wouldn't play Mitch and Towns a lot together?
That's a really good question. I don't believe so. I just think he doesn't like Sims that much because he's played Precious with Towns.
Yeah.
Like the argument would be Precious can do a little bit more on ball on offense than Sims can, so he can function more as a 4. I don't think Tibbs is playing Precious Achua because he believes he's adding much on the ball at the 4.
Yeah.
He loves Mitch. I think Mitch is the closest thing we have to Rudy Gobert, at least when he's healthy. And we saw like Cat and Rudy Gobert were very effective, right? And I think Cat will still play the majority of his minutes at 5, but to have that as a change of pace, I think does matter. So I think he just doesn't like Sims. But I do also think I highlighted that because I feel like if he was so gung-ho on rim protection, he would have forced that to happen more. And he just hasn't at all.
Let me ask you this, because this has happened at least twice with Mitch in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. Mitch is a very interesting player to me because I find that he's the most striking thing to me ever in terms of how often he ends up underestimated, while at the same time, to me, like, it's always been obvious that there was more ceiling with a player who can do more. To be like, where Mitch is limited, he's very limited. Like where he's limited, and it's always. I mean, I remember even writing about it. I think in 21, certainly by 23, it was like, okay, he's cool, but if they could get, I think back then it was like Brook Lopez, and like if they could get a guy who could defend and who could shoot, because then Randall it would open up and blah blah blah, and like, oh god, I just forgot who I was thinking about for a second.
Melo?
Who am I talking about?
Melo?
No. How did this whole point start? Jesus.
Sims? Achua?
Sims, Mitch. So Mitch, like, then in 23, Mitch is the best. There's only 2 players on the Knicks who have been, for the Knicks anyway, like the best player in a playoff series that they won. And one is Brunson and one is Mitch. Like, and I feel, so I remember then being like, oh my God, like Mitch so good. And then sometimes, especially when Hartenstein started doing a lot of Hartenstein things, it became impossible not to notice, like, oh, like, if you could pay Hartenstein what you're paying Mitch and Mitch what you're paying, would you? I think a lot of people would. The question I'm coming to is it possible that Mitch has been gone now so long and Towns has been here and it's a completely different look, and they've had great regular season success, and I'm very annoyed. I'm very annoyed with whatever the hell is going on with Mitch's injury. I don't know if I'm annoyed with Mitch or with the Knicks or whatever, but it's fucking ridiculous that it's been this long with absolutely no clarification. Are we possibly in any way underestimating what the return of Mitchell Robinson could mean for this team's ceiling this season? Does Mitch coming back change the calculus in any way as far as where you think this team can or is likely to end up?
You have to know the health, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I still think Karl-Anthony Towns plays 30 minutes a game at least at center. But what this gives you now, right? imagine this, right? Mitchell Robinson, his flaws show up when he plays 30 minutes, right?
Mhm.
I think his conditioning has been underrated for most of his career, but because he's always coming off injury, it can be an issue. He can't shoot free throws, and he can get into foul trouble. But
Although he makes them in the playoffs when it counts.
that's Shaq. Well, actually, he's done. I think he was like 4 of 6 or whatever when
He did.
Nurse did hack a Shaq. But the point is, like, he is a guy. If you could just say like Mitchell Robinson can be Mitchell Robinson for 20 minutes a game, that's really like that takes away most of the negatives, right?
Yep.
And then all of the positives are probably this is not a guy who's ever really had motor issues, right? Like there's very rarely you might say he's doing too much, you might say he's contesting too much. This has never been a guy where it's an issue of like he's not playing hard, right? Or he might look gassed, but that'll show up more from like being a step late, not because he won't try. So doing that for 15, 20 minutes a game, you bottle that lightning up. Oh yeah. Against which teams would it matter? I think it definitely matters against Cleveland because Jared Allen is a problem, and Mitchell Robinson is one person who seemed to have a solution for that problem. Even if most people will say Jared Allen is a better player overall than Mitchell Robinson, but head to head, Mitchell Robinson has often gotten the better of him. Even against a team like Boston, just to eat a few fouls against Porzingis, right? You don't love him even just to put some length there. You don't love him kind of in pick and roll against that team just because of how well they move the ball. Be aggressive. Like he's only going to play 15 to 20 minutes, so he should have more energy, and he's got the foot speed. And then my conspiracy theory also is I'm fairly certain Mitchell Robinson dominated Isaiah Hartenstein in practice because he's exactly the kind of big who gives Hartenstein problems. Hartenstein is great against bigs that don't have his size, motor, and strength, right? Mitch has all those things and he's more athletic. And I have a feeling that's why I think Mitch was better. So do I think Isaiah Hartenstein's a better player? Absolutely. But Mitch has done well against those kind of bigs. And I think if we are so lucky to face that team in the finals, absolutely Mitch matters, right? But I do think it's different from before where Mitch is like your linchpin center. In this case, Mitch is more of a change of pace, kind of a curveball you can throw, but you want as much in your bag as possible because that's what you need. Like we talk about these championship teams. It can often be a Luke Longley or a John Paxson, or I'm trying not to talk about traumatizing memories from the 90s, so I'll go with
I'm not liking this at all.
Andre Iguodala. But yeah, Andre Iguodala was a sixth man for the Warriors, right? A guy like Sean Livingston was six. These guys matter a lot for these teams. Not every and they don't matter every game, but the games they do can switch a series, right? Because that's the thing. You have to be. Do you want to be a Swiss Army knife or do you want to be a sledgehammer? In the playoffs, you have to be both, right? So,
Bruce Brown, classic example, right? For Denver.
I mean, I think for the 70s Knicks, right, you would have they were all kind of stars, though. That's maybe not a.
They were all.
I mean, Bill Bradley, I guess, was not as much of a star, but
not as much. A couple other things I want to make sure that we talk about from this game because I don't think they're gonna get picked up in the mainstream, and I don't want to lose them. One is I want to know which you have a bigger problem with fashion-wise, whatever that mustache is that JJ Redick is going for, or the 13th century monastery homage, Austin Reeves, whatever that hairband thing was that was happening. I was struck by both looks. I don't know what Redick is doing, but the Austin Reeves, like Father Aquinas, I have never seen anything like that in my life in an NBA game.
I mean, JJ Redick's always been kind of a weird-looking dude to me. So yeah, I thought the Austin Reeves thing was weird.
Right?
Yeah. To be honest, the one thing I was joking about earlier, like if we actually get Bronny James minutes because we're losing that bad, I might have to commit seppuku. And it happened, and that was like, wow. That's probably the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to a contending team ever, right?
Well, also something that happened in that game that I'm really getting tired of. And I'm adding this to the list of like there are certain very, very random Knicks superlatives over the years. Like Howard Isley is the worst Knick I've ever seen lead a fast break consistently, like in my lifetime. It's a very weird thing to be, but that's Howard Isley. There's another weird Knick superlative now that I can add to my all-time list, and that is that the worst Knick I have ever seen just driving to the basket. Landry Shamet once a game gets his fucking lunch stolen, like eaten in front of him, and then like slapped back in the face with it. It's every single game, and I still always have the reflex of like, "Come on, he got fat," and then you're like, "No, it's Shamit," and like he's not complaining either. And then the replay will show like he did not get fat. That man needs a floater. It will change his life. Landry, if you're listening, Pod Strickland, floater, I'm telling you, you will be making so much more money. He gets blasted every game.
Worse than Frank Ntilikina?
Yes. Absolutely.
Worse than but Quickly was never horrible. Yeah.
I'll give you there's only one other guy who's close, and he wins because he was much bigger and more athletic doing. So at least once a year was great. It was like a circadian rhythm. Once a year, Kevin Knox would go up for these dunks that were going to be like the most incredible. You would never finish them, but once a year he would go up, and here comes Knox. But because he was 6'10", like he didn't make it, but it still looks cooler. And he would get to the line. Shamit's just like
nope. Yeah.
Shamit might as well just dribble into the lane and like hand the ball to the defense. It would not be anywhere.
Shumpert used to miss a lot of highlight dunks too.
Yes,
Shumpert
he did.
And Dennis Smith Jr. were like the king of like. This would be dope if you just made it.
Yep.
And then I was thinking of someone else too who was. Oh yeah, can you think of a dunk that looked very ugly but resulted in free throws? A dunk attempt.
A dunk attempt? So they were fouled?
Yeah, they got a foul call. Is more accurate, and it was the ugliest. Most hilarious.
Stat had one like that.
No, you're in the right ballpark. I'm talking about the Italian stallion, Andrea Bargnani, when he like tried to go over two dudes. He landed.
When you said Italian stallion, I was like, when did Gallinari have a dunk like that?
Gallinari has nothing but respect.
And then I forgot about Bargnani, yes.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
No, that was different, right? That was
I just love the fact that like he might be the only player I've ever seen that has a Clyde audio meme of horror that like I knew you would know right away what it was.
Yeah, it is. We've come a long way from them. It's good to think about those times. And again, to remind everyone, Mario Zanu beat LeBron at MSG, and that will be he will never live that down. Going to get to some of these comments. Jalen's up and down processing game to game is getting tired. We talked about Jalen a lot. Did you think his processing was off tonight, or do you think he missed shots?
What I think is actually getting tiring from game to game is people fucking complaining about Jalen Brunson. Like, what the fuck do you want? It was not a great game. You can be disappointed in the game. I have seen in now 2.5 years from Jalen Brunson, like nothing but evidence that basically what he's doing all the time is either helping the team win in the moment or making some kind of sacrifice to learn or process something that in the future will help him. But it's like the last thing I'm worried about is Jalen Brunson's processing. Like, sorry, that's just me. I'm not worried about. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I think his decision making probably isn't at the level of like peak Steve Nash or John Stockton or Gary Payton.
It never has been. It never has been.
Yeah, but it's it's as good as anyone below that tier. Is that good enough to win a championship with your best player? We honestly don't know. But I do think there's something to be said, and I think you would agree, Matt, that if we judge, I think that's what's happening a lot, right? Everything Brunson is being judged now, it does now, that joy of just when he was here, and it's like, holy shit, we got this guy everyone said we overpaid for, and he's actually an all-star. That joy, I think we've all lost a little bit because we're judging everything as like, are we going to win a championship, right? And you can't enjoy just the fact that this is the best player we've had since Ewing, at least. We in fact, I would go so far as to say these are the two best players we've had since Ewing. So it's, but I think with expectations, I don't know if you have a great quote on expectations just taking the joy out of life, but I'm sure you have better quotes than I do on that. But I think that's kind of where we are right now.
For me, like, I do think that's happened for a lot of people because I see these kinds of comments. For me, very specifically, like, I waited like over 30 years of my life to see the Knicks have a good point guard, and then they got like a great point guard. So I am gonna have to see like a lot of shit just burn and go to hell before I complain about Jalen Brunson. And it's not like, he's untouchable. Just he's done so many positive things. It's not just that he's done so many positive things. I haven't seen anything from Brunson this year that like stylistically, culturally, like in any way concerns me. I've seen a guy who has seen his role change every year he's been here. His first year here, he has to like adapt to, here's your first NBA team ever, Jalen Brunson. And while you're running that NBA team, try to acclimate with a very streaky from year to year co-star in Julius Randle. Try not to lose your, third year player who also needs a lot of shots. A year later, after that, your co-star is going to be gone for like half the season. Acclimate these new people. Wear a Superman cape the last 2 or 3 months of the season. And then the next season, right at the start of training camp, here's Karl-Anthony Towns, wildly different player than the guy that you just get rid of. Now, run this offense that is top 3 in the league while you're figuring it out like on the fly. Like, I'm not worried about that, man.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to throughout his career take every challenge, take every setback, and turn it into a positive. So,
yeah,
are there things that can improve? Of course. I think there's also things that are probably, he's not going to be Steve Nash. He's not going to be John Morant. And he's not going to be the kind of player who can, there are length issues. Pause. Right. So, but he's figured it out pretty much all the time. It's just a little frustrating. Weekend game, everyone wanted to go into Sunday with a nice positive Saturday night memory. Didn't get that. Do you want to talk about this comment from Jordan Bubb? Josh Hart as Knicks falls to Lakers. 26 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals. If you told me before the game somebody had those numbers in this game, I would have said, oh, it's LeBron. Now, LeBron put up even better numbers, but this is a LeBron James stat line. And Hart was the one guy who seemed to keep being able to get to tough spots. And I think it's very interesting to talk about his performance today because he was doing things like pull up contested middies, right? Obviously, there's the defense, getting big rebounds, but getting to the rim constantly against a team that was walling off the paint. A lot of the stuff he did wasn't just like a role player taking advantage of the situation. It's star stuff. And like he is a role. At times he looks like the guy who can kind of run the show and even pick up things. We haven't gotten a chance, I think, to talk. I mean, we've talked about Hart in the past, but I think this season Hart has really gone to another level, which, people are already very happy with the player he was. And it's, there are people who legitimately say he has an all-star case. And I would agree, he's putting up 14-9 and 14-10 and 5 on like, he's one of the most efficient players in the league. Talk a little bit about Hart. I mean, we could talk about tonight, but it's really what he's been doing all season, right?
Yeah, Hart has been. It's only been about 2 years now that he's been a Knick, and ever since he got here, it's always felt like he just makes the kind of sense. Like, I remember when he first got here, they went on this huge run after they acquired him, and it instantly felt like, okay, this guy just, and he's very, we've written about this and talked about this, like he has this very unique sort of like chimeric etymology where he's like John Starks and Anthony Mason and Dennis Rodman, like kind of all rolled into one player. And those are all guys who
You used that in
were
your
all
last
stars.
column. I remember that.
They were all stars at some point. And they all made, and none of them came into the league. Even Starks, for his eventual, prolificness as a 3-point shooter, Starks came in as a defensive player. That's how he got his place in the league. Same thing for Rodman when he came in with Detroit, and certainly same thing for Mason. And then they kind of all expanded, their roles as they went out and began to play with better players. And you see a lot of that happen also with Hart. Hart played with trash teams. Like, he played on bad Laker teams. He played on, I don't remember the Pelicans. I don't feel like they were good when he was really there. Portland wasn't like anything. He didn't really play on good teams, so they got to the Knicks. But like, he's such a basketball player. He's such a, like, the guy that you see at a gym who just like, every game, okay, he plays on this team and they need rebounding, so he rebounds. And then the next weekend he's playing for this team and they don't have anyone who can distribute, so he's setting people up. And then the next week he can get out and run. Like, he's a joy to watch. He really feels to me like, in some ways, the most popular Knick, even though I'm not going to pretend that he's a bigger deal than Brunson. But there's something, last year in the playoffs when everybody kept getting hurt, like when Hart showed like just any sign of like there was, like, I think the OG hush tonight would have been, like even louder if it had been Hart. Even though OG's a better player, I would say objectively. Like, maybe you could argue that, but like, I feel like more teams would want OG on an OB, but then would want maybe just he does something more specific. But like, it's funny, the more you watch Hart, he's by far the least, he will be, especially once Bridges extends, like the least highly paid by far of the group. He's going to have the least all-star hype. He's going to have the least, like, all defense, all whatever. And yet, when you made the point about the Knicks from the 70s, what they did together sometimes obscured, like Bill Bradley. If you look at Bill Bradley's resume, Bill Bradley was an all-star like once. I don't think he was ever an all-league player. But if you talk to people from back then about Bill Bradley, they'll tell you, like, yeah, well, the accolades in the box scores don't show you the pressure he put on a defense by constantly moving. Bill Bradley was like constantly in motion, and that alone just did things for his teammates. Josh Hart is similar. Like you were saying tonight, even though they didn't win, just the energy that he brings to everything that he does opened up things that would not exist if that was random player X or even random all-star X, as opposed to relentless Josh Hart.
Yeah, and he has he's got the stats to match it now. You don't have to talk about him like, I mean, I'm not saying
he has the tangibles and the intangibles.
Yeah, and I agree. He's Brunson is always going to have his own special plays, right? But I think the other guys are often as beloved, right? So, and especially Josh Hart just epitomized. I'm trying to think of other examples from other championship teams. I guess the closest analog is a guy like Draymond, except Hart seems like a much more stable person. But
he does.
But that's the kind, like Draymond and Iguodala. Iguodala's getting his jersey retired in Golden State, which I got into somewhat of an argument with my boss because she was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to the game where she lives in San Francisco." She was like, I'm going to go to the game where Iguodala gets his jersey retired, and I was like, "That's setting a low bar, isn't it?" But those guys are beloved, right? Because they do the things that we know Steph is great. We know that Brunson's great. But yeah. So moving on, just want to get to some of these comments before we wrap up. X-rays negative on OG and Anunoby, so that's good. Hopefully, it's not a ligament issue. This is an interesting fact. The Knicks record is the same now as it was last season. I believe at this and that, but I do have to say, I think last season that included just the insane stretch they went on with OG after the break.
It did.
Which you can also argue that, yeah, but that means they played half the season or whatever, everything before the OG trade with, I think it's fair to say, a substantially inferior team to the one they have right now. I also think it points to the fact, though, that like after February 1st is when Brunson took off. And it's interesting because on the one hand, to the point you made, and which I tend to agree with, Brunson is averaging like 26 and 7.5 assists at a very low turnover rate, like 62 true shooting. But the thing is, the last 2 years, and part of that is because the last 2 years Randall has gotten hurt every time, and it's been out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I felt that in general, like he started his first 2 seasons with the Knicks, and I think now the third. Like if you remember that Philly series or the end of that season, anytime Brunson had a little bit of room on a mid-range jumper, I was like, that's in.
Yep.
I don't feel that way right now. So like, I get it that it's dumb to criticize Brunson. I just, when he takes a shot, I am like, oh, is it going to go in or not? Like, what I'm saying is that's not a knock on how he's playing this year. That is more just how incredible he's been the backstretch of both of the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. Every time he took a floater, every time he took a mid-range jump shot, every time he took a pull-up, every time he took a shot, I was like, that's going in. It doesn't feel that way right now, but I also think it didn't feel that way for the first parts of the last 2 seasons. And I do think he's kind of kicked it into gear and like reached that. He's gone from like that top 15, top 20 player to like MVP level the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. If that is in store, that makes the Knicks even more scary. And for what it's worth, besides tonight, the last few games, his 3-point shooting, his overall scoring and playmaking has picked up. So I do think a Brunson, kind of step up, there's reason to believe that's in the cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have a firepower overall that they haven't had since the 70s. Like in terms of top end, in terms of like top end championship talent on a team, this is the best team since like 70, 73, 74.
Better than any of the Ewing teams, huh?
Yes. Because the Ewing teams were much more like Ewing is all this, and then you're getting like this from the rest. And this team is much more like Brunson's all NBA. Like Ewing was all NBA, and then really almost nobody else was really even all-star. And here you've got
Towns 2 all-NBA players.
Towns is having an MVP season, top 10 MVP season. Brunson's been there. OG, Bridges, Hart are all like borderline accolade. Could be a third all-star in the right season on a good, if the Knicks win 60 games, one of those guys is going to be a third all-star. Like they have never had that. Same thing in 2013. Nice team. Melo was, I think, third or fourth in MVP, but like it wasn't. And it's funny because this team doesn't have a lot of depth, but like really just about everyone on this team really is either a two-way player or an MVP level on one side of the ball. Like just about everybody. And like in the 90s, the Knicks always lost because the other team could do that. Chicago was the team that like they didn't have as many one-dimensional people. Or when they did, they could get away with it because Jordan and Pippen could do more than Ewing and whoever the second guy was, Starks. But now you have a team really where I play Boston. You want to say Tatum's the best player in the series? Fine. That still means the Knicks have 2 and 3. You want to play Cleveland? There's no one on the Cavaliers that I would put ahead of Towns or Brunson.
Wow. Yeah, Mitchell has been having a great year. Garland is terrific. I think with the Cavs, it comes down to more specific matchups. Mobley is not as good as Cat, but he is the kind of defender who can cause problems. So you'd put both Cat and Brunson over. I obviously agree over Jaylen Brown, but Jaylen Brown is not having a great season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way,
to counter my own whatever, the playoffs really do matter, and Towns has not had a spectacular playoff history. Although I do wonder how much of that is Towns has never been on a team that's good either. Towns has never been on a team that's put him in a position to succeed at what he is best at, the way this team has either. So maybe that's it. But to be fair,
I do want to bring this up. What do you think Towns' averages are for his career in the playoffs?
like his whole career. He's
Yeah.
been there twice, I think.
He's been there 4 times.
4 different years or 4
Yeah.
series?
4 different years.
Oh, but they've only won one. Okay, they've won once. The other time that they lost.
I think they won twice last year because they made the Western
No,
Conference.
yeah, they won 2 series, but I think those are the only 2 years they've ever won a series.
Yeah.
I know because I just looked up his. I was just doing research on the Denver series, so I know he didn't have like enormous numbers. I think it was like around 18 in the Denver series. I would guess for his career, he's probably somewhere around like 18 to 20 a game on lower shooting than what he has in the regular season.
It is lower shoot, so it's 19 and 10 with 2.4 assists on 47% field goal and 35% 3-point, 82% from the free throw line, which comes out to true shooting in the playoffs of about of 58%.
Which compared to Randall, what he's been is basically Will Chamberlain.
I was gonna say, Cat standards in the regular season make his playoff droppings, and I will say, he has stretches where he looks horrible. He does disappear, and for a guy of his, and yeah, I think it's completely fair to hold him to a higher standard than Randall, because as much as I love Julius Randle, Cat is bigger, stronger, and more skilled. I will hold him to a higher standard. Sorry, Randall has limitations that he makes work, so it's more understandable. But 19 and 9 on or 19 and 10 on good solid efficiency. That's not like a liability.
Not on great offenses either.
Yeah, and last year he was really important to your point of slowing down Jokic.
And Durant, when they played Phoenix in the Phoenix series, Towns did a lot of work against Durant.
And I think last year was the first time he was really the number 2. I mean, he's made the playoffs with Ant twice before.
Yep.
But last year is clearly a number 2, and he had Rudy protecting him. So you add that Mitch element, and like if he gets to play, and even with Ant, right? I'm sure there's real hoopers #real hoopers who are going to say, "What do you mean Brunson's better?" Yes, I think Brunson is a way better. I think Brunson is just flat out better than Anthony Edwards. I think he's also a way better partner for Cat right now. I don't think Anthony Edwards can't get there, but he's a younger player. He is more of a pure scorer than Brunson, who is a score first guy that can play point guard. So I'm kind of not worried about Cat in the playoffs. He can get exploited on defense a little bit, but we got to put things in perspective. Like, yeah, it's not the same guy as regular season. We've seen much worse in terms of playoff dropping, even for Melo. Right? I think his numbers are probably efficiency wise better than Melo in the playoffs.
Could be.
And then I did want to talk Jordan Bubb again. Sorry, putting up some good posts. The Knicks have a tough schedule coming up. You said you wanted to mention a point about OG. We don't need to get in the minutes debate. But the Knicks have a tough schedule coming up until the All-Star break. Are there things you want to see Tibbs do any differently in terms of minutes? We don't have to go into a deep discussion. This debate has been had every one way, but I know you have the benefit of many years of perspective. You've seen the NBA in different eras. I'm curious, gut feeling, should Tibbs be playing the start, or should Tibbs be playing some guys less? Should we be doing rest games? Just very curious.
I say this as a person who long before Thibodeau, my whole life, I am obsessed with starters' minutes. I have been since Riley. I have yelled at every Knicks coach since the 90s who has had his starters in a game with 4 minutes left if they're up 15. I always just want to get them out, get out. As a person who's admittedly paranoid about that, I think Thibodeau takes too much shit. I think in recent games, Breen made a good point about it during the game tonight. You don't really always think about it this way. Shamet missed the first, 29 games of the season. Precious Achua missed the first, 21 or 23 games. It wasn't a big, deep team to begin with. And then 2 of your bench players combined missed their first 50 games of the season. I think Thibodeau, you saw the last couple of weeks, especially when Shamet returned and has been playing more. I don't think it's a coincidence. The last couple of games, it wasn't bad opposition. It was Memphis and Denver. The bench was playing well. The bench was getting more minutes. I don't think Tibbs is the minutes monster that he is made out to be. That's enough for tonight. I don't think Tibbs is a minutes monster. And I think going forward between now and the All-Star break, I really have to wait and hear what they say about OG. Because I think that really does matter a lot, particularly against Houston and Boston.
Yeah. So I think
nice way of saying that the Raptors suck. Sorry.
I agree he's not a minutes monster. I also think there's a cascading effect when someone gets hurt. The comments are blowing up, Matt. I don't know if you've been taking a look, because I am reading something right now that I actually cannot believe at all. Have you seen this or no?
I don't even know where the comments are. So, okay. Comments.
There we Shams go. Cherenia breaking. The Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. Sources tell ESPN. 3-team deal that includes Utah. Holy fucking shit. They literally traded Luka for Anthony Davis. That is the wildest. I'm trying to think of anything that comes close to that. Like I don't know why the Mavs would do it. Yeah, Chris Bernhard, I would agree 100%. Matt, initial reaction? I can send you the tweet if
I didn't believe it at first. My guess is to my shocked brain first thought, why are the Mavs doing this? Is probably because they have to. I have always thought that there was this typical of Dallas, and I'm just talking off the top of my head now, but I've always felt that there's been this assumption that somehow, like Luka is a soccer player in Barcelona, he's never going to want to. It's fucking Dallas. This idea that like Luka Doncic was going to play his whole career in Dallas because Mark Cuban is clever, or it never made sense. I always dreamed that the Knicks were going to trade for Luka. I always thought, actually, I never wanted to voice this because I thought it was mean, but that I always thought since Randall was from Dallas, that eventually Randall would be part of a trade to bring Luka here, and that would help make everybody happy because Randall would have a homecoming. The reason I assume this is happening, because I don't think Anthony Davis told Rich Paul, I want to be in Dallas. I believe this is Luka Doncic saying, I want to be in Los Angeles. And LeBron, who is a pretty good chess player, we were talking about chess earlier, as much as LeBron loves AD, this doesn't happen if LeBron's not cool with it. And LeBron's cool with it because the Lakers and LeBron, this is one of the rare players in the league. They have kind of two different senses of what they wanted to do. Lakers want to protect the future. LeBron wants to win now. Well, this kind of, you can argue how much of a contender it makes them now, but I think it makes them pretty dangerous. I am admittedly in shock with everything that I'm saying. But I'm happy it's happening only because fuck the Mavs, fuck their new owner. I won't say anything else about it, but fuck the Mavs, man.
Yeah,
Stacey, what do you think of this news?
I'm still dude, this is
when you first said it, I literally went to the site and was like, I know this is wrong. Well, he's been pranked. It's a fake Shams.
No, it was in the comments. Luka's a Laker, and I thought someone was like, you're just making fun of the Lakers for being a shit show.
Yeah. Jennifer Dixon, could it be misinformation? It does not appear to be misinformation, Jennifer Dixon. This shit appears to be real.
Yeah, as opposed to everything else on X.com.
No wonder Braun was so happy, he said.
Wait, what if they had to add in Bronny? Do you think if they were like, we have to put Bronny in his salary, LeBron would have been like, fuck Luka.
Yeah, I think he would.
That is like I want to talk about this because I think you've watched the NBA for longer than me. I cannot think Sean Kemp for Vin Baker. No, like that. The fact that I even brought that up, like, can you think of like the second best player of all time, still probably a top 10, top 15 player for like a top 3 player? I can't think of. I really can't think of another trade that's even close. The Bulls nearly traded Pippen for Kemp, and I think that would have been one of the biggest. I if you can't tell, I am a huge Sean Kemp stan, but this is bigger than that, and that didn't even happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I mean, usually when someone this big gets traded, you usually don't get $1 for $1. You know.
Yeah, that's I think also right. You think usually it's like 45 first-round picks or whatever, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, even just on the level of like how often. Like it was really big when Denver got Iverson to pair with Melo, but they traded Billups, and Billups wasn't on that level anymore. I mean, he was never on that level. I'm trying to think of. Maybe the fact that I can't think of it is the answer. I'm trying to think of the biggest trade of one really high, top dude for another.
I mean, there's Aguirre for Dantley, I guess.
What the hell's Dallas? Yeah, but even by that point, Dantley, they weren't. Neither one of them was close to as young as Luka is now. Like they were much more later in their career when that happened. Do you think Dallas is doing okay? Who cares if we're right or wrong? Because we're just gonna have fun talking about this because it's happening right now. Is your first instinct that Dallas is doing this because they want Anthony Davis, or that Dallas has to make this trade and that Anthony Davis is someone that they're going to move somewhere else for pieces? Because now I can't make sense of anything. Does Kyrie stay?
I think Kyrie and Anthony Davis, when Anthony Davis is healthy, is still a really dangerous pair. The
Do you think
Mavs,
Dallas is still thinking like we can build something? Okay.
If it was any other player, my thought would be there is a reason to think Dallas could say, "Hey, we beat." I mean, they smoked us without Luka, right?
They smoked our teams without Luka.
They smoked them, and
Kyrie's been great. Gafford. This is why this is weird too. Daniel Gafford has been incredible, even with Luka out. There was a piece in the Athletic today. Whoever wrote it, it was about like 10 players to keep an eye on, and Daniel Gafford's stats were. I didn't know this about him. If you look at his game log, Daniel Gafford's been putting up like 27 and 15, shooting 12 of 12, 9 of 12. He's like second in the league in dunks, even though Luka's missed a ton of games, and that's like his lob guy. Like he's been defensively, he's been like astonishing. And now you have Anthony Davis. So
and Lively, right? So yeah, I can see how the Mavs are not punting on anything, and they're like, if this was another player, another vet, you'd be like, well, we have a really good team. Kyrie can handle the number one load. What if we get one of the still a top 5 defensive player in basketball, right? When healthy, maybe he's up there with Wemby as number 2, I think.
And it works great for them because Anthony Davis always has wanted to play beside. He doesn't want to be 5, and now you put him on a team with Gafford. Like there's a great 5.
Having said that, even if you thought Anthony Davis gives you a better chance to win this season than Luka Doncic, which is dubious, there's no way they make this trade if Luka was 100% happy.
No, and I always I
don't know if it's the market thing or what, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's some of it. I think also this is a dude who's been playing since he was like 15, like professionally, and hasn't had a lot of say over his mobility. I don't think he dreamed of coming to the U.S. to play in Dallas. And I mean, this guy wants to be. Luka's aspirations are. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it's like when Wayne Gretzky was in Edmonton, and there was a point of recognition of just like this guy is not going to stay in Edmonton his whole life. Like he's too big. Like the world is not going to let this guy stay in Edmonton his whole life. And Luka Doncic to me was never a guy. I always thought it would be New York or LA.
But Dallas is not Edmonton. I mean, it's the fourth or fifth largest city, high-profile owner, a big fan base.
Yes, but if you're
considered
from
a big market by
Slovenia, if
most.
you're from Slovenia, does it matter that Dallas is the fourth or fifth largest city versus New York, LA? Particularly when New York is better than Dallas and LA will be once you're there. I mean, we keep talking about Dallas. The other thing is, Chris Bernard is saying Gretzky would have stayed in Edmonton forever. Yeah, he would have. I'm saying the rest of the world was like, Wayne, you're not staying here. Like, too many people, there's too much money to be. I'm not saying Wayne wanted to leave, but I'm saying the world was never going to let that guy stay in Edmonton. And I don't think Luka in this case will understand it. But we keep talking about Dallas. So here you have the Lakers. There may be other moves. I don't know what other contingencies will come from this in terms of flexibility or other moves, but a team based presumably around Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Early, just first thought, best thought. Does this give the Lakers a greater likelihood of a higher playoff ceiling, perhaps even a trip to the finals?
I think the West is a crapshoot based on matchups. I'll say this. It's wild to me that the Mavs were the team giving up a first-round pick. Luka is better than Anthony Davis today.
Yeah.
And is younger. And the Mavs give up Kleber, who you can argue is a good player, and Markieff Morris. But the Lakers not only give up a 2029 first-round pick, they give up Max Christie. You can argue that Max Christie, whatever, but like he's a good young prospect. So they gave up essentially 2 first-round picks plus Anthony Davis. Okay, so I'm reading this wrong. So the Mavs got 2 first-round picks. I would say
just a full trade for everybody because I'm just seeing it now, just to review for the first time. The Lakers have acquired Luka, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris, who's not the one who sunned the dude on the Wizards. The Mavericks have acquired Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and the Lakers 2029 first. And Danny Ainge has come along to slop up Jalen Hood-Schifino, the 2025 Clippers second-round pick, and the 2025 Mavericks second-round pick.
Yeah, so for the Lakers, does this give them better? I think it's tough. I don't know how Luka and LeBron both like the ball in their hands. Luka has adapted to playing with Kyrie Irving, but he's still not a great off-ball player. One of them, they are going to, if they actually both use, but to the point we were making earlier this pod, these are 2 of the smartest players in the history of the game. They're both 6'7", 6'8". You can stagger, right? You're gonna have to deal with one of LeBron or Luka Doncic for 48 minutes a game. That is an incredibly scary thought. They lack rim protection really, but they have a lot of switchable defenders. It depends who they play. If they play Oklahoma City, I don't love their chances. If they play Dallas, I like their chances. If they play Denver, I like their chances.
Is it wrong to like their chances more against OKC now? Because although I feel like when the Knicks have played OKC and some other teams, you can see that like even with Hartenstein, Holmgren's out, so maybe it's different when they're healthy, but like they still sometimes struggle with size. So I would think Anthony Davis causes the problems. But when you've got to have an answer for, like, I assume Luka will play on ball a ton, and LeBron will now get to have some energy.
LeBron can cut. LeBron is not a watch, like he's not Westbrook or
Luka, and now he's going to be invigorated. Like, do you think the Thunder will have more of a problem with a Laker team built around LeBron and Luka than they would have around a team built on LeBron and AD? OKC specifically.
I think it's tough. I mean, how much do you believe Anthony Davis would have affected Shego's OKC? I think their danger is getting one-dimensional at the rim. And I'll say this after last year's playoffs. I did not think Isaiah Hartenstein was that great on defense in the playoffs. He struggled with Miles Turner. He struggled with Embiid. That's just a fact. Against elite, he is a very high floor player, and he will still have a good game on offense. But I think Anthony Davis would have dominated that matchup. Now, is LA going to throw out? I don't think Rui Hachimura can dominate it. Are you going to play LeBron at the 5 more? But there's interesting. I mean, Reeves, LeBron, Luka, and then Max Christie, who I actually really thought played well tonight, and like Rui or something. There's some interesting lineups they can throw out there, and they can put a lot of ball handling out there. And I think that is really important against OKC. We saw that with the Knicks, where when Brunson would get trapped, they had few outlets. On net, I can't make a firm declaration one or the other. I think they lose. I think what would have actually been an advantage against OKC in the paint, but they traded for being better equipped for OKC's ball pressure. And I mean, you have. Look, I don't think LeBron is the same player anymore. But if you're telling me in a 7-game series, those are 2 of the top 5 guys I'd want.
Yep, exactly.
How well will they play together, I think, is the interesting question. But LeBron figured it out with Wade. And I think Luka's better shooter and, probably.
Yeah, I think these 2 guys are going to figure it out, I feel like.
And the last thing I'll say is there's just a foreboding to me. Like, somehow the league allowed the Lakers to get Magic Johnson and then in quick succession get James Worthy, right? After getting, like, in 1996, somehow the league allowed Kobe Bryant to go to the Lakers.
Right.
This feels like another one of those trades where, in hindsight, it's like you let the biggest young star go to LA, like right at the end of LeBron's career. I think we could be looking at it like that and be like, "Fuck, why did that have to happen?" So
it's the Lakers are when the Lakers are good and the Knicks are bad. It's very annoying to watch the Lakers like succeeding, and the thought of Luka being like a great Laker in like 2030 is like it's giving me some triggers, man. Like I like hating the Lakers, and I like the Lakers not being that good. I don't miss the Lakers being great, and this is gonna suck if you don't like the Lakers.
Well, it's also because you heard the "We Want Bronny" chants tonight. So I was like, "Why are Knicks fans chanting for that?" I'll tell you what. We play Boston. We don't get that much invasion. I have been to games against
only
Boston.
The Lakers. It's only the Lakers.
It's only the Lakers where we have like even tonight when we're really good.
Yep, always has been since the 90s at least.
Which is annoying. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, the other thing is like whatever you want to attribute it to, Luka has not stayed on the court as much as you'd like for someone his age. Does his conditioning improve? Does his effort on defense improve? Did he ever play with? I don't think he played with JJ, right?
Redick?
Yeah.
I think he did.
Luke ever?
I thought he did.
Yeah, I mean, of the 11 players currently in the NBA that have played with Redick, 5 of them are currently on the roster of the Mavericks, Luka and others. So maybe that was part of the appeal, like we're all buddies and all of that. But definitely just I can't think of a wilder trade that I've seen. Like the Paul George.
I remember the last one that was where a player this great, especially to where now like everything gets leaked all the time. The last time that a guy this good, still this young,
it's kind of wild. Jimmy Butler wasn't involved in it. Like you always thought that was going to be the next big trade.
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking earlier today. Like I was getting upset in my head at the Hawks because I was like, they've had Trae Young now like 6 or 7 years. It's obviously not working. Like, why don't they just figure it out and move on? And now the Mavs have moved on from Luka
before
the Hawks have moved on with Trae Young. If we are lucky, like I usually don't care that much about matchups, but like a Laker Mavs playoff series would be absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
Kyrie
I
against
feel like it's gonna
LeBron,
happen.
Luka and AD against the old teams.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if I wanted to cheat, I could say we saw Paul George get traded for a future MVP, but nobody was thinking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that way at the time. So
That's a whole other pod, brother. That's a whole other pod.
Well, I know it's got to be. It's for me at least a little bit of an early evening, but I know it's got to be late for you. Crazy late, brother. Force him to run against Ship. Crazy late night. So thanks for hopping on, Matt. Thanks to everybody else who joined. Sorry you
Thank
couldn't
you,
get the
everybody.
win, but some interesting distraction from the same team, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of the weekend. And take care. We'll see you soon.
Peace, everyone.